The road had no name, only gravel and frost crunching beneath the worn tires of Daniel Rourke's pickup truck. The steering wheel trembled beneath his hands the same way his life had been trembling for months, barely holding together. He hadn't spoken in hours, afraid that if he did, his voice might shake too. From the passenger seat came a small voice, light and curious. "Daddy?" "Is it far?" Daniel glanced at the rearview mirror. His daughter Lily, 6 years old, had drawn fog circles on the window with her fingertips. Her stuffed rabbit sat buckled beside her like a second passenger. "Almost there, kiddo," he said softly. "See those trees up ahead? That's our turn." He tried to sound confident, but his chest ached with doubt. Their turn led to an abandoned farmhouse he had bought sight unseen for $15,000, his last $15,000. He told himself it was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to give Lily something that resembled a home again. The sun had already begun to fade behind the Vermont hills, pouring violet light over the pines. A few last snowflakes drifted down like forgotten memories. When he turned onto the narrow dirt lane, he could hear the whisper of branches scraping the truck roof. And then he saw it, a thin gray line curling upward from the chimney of the old farmhouse. Smoke. His stomach dropped. The wheel jerked slightly in his grip. He blinked, hoping it was a trick of the dusk, maybe fog, maybe his imagination. But no. The steady rise of smoke glowed faintly orange like a warning. Someone was in his house. He hit the brakes. The tires skidded, pebbles crackling beneath them. Lily's head snapped up. "Daddy, why are we stopping? Is that our house?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His heart hammered against his ribs, his instincts shifting into the cautious rhythm of a man who'd seen too much go wrong. The farmhouse stood just ahead, small and weathered, leaning slightly like it had grown tired of waiting for anyone to come back. He remembered it from the listing photos, the sagging porch, the peeling white paint, the broken shutters. But in those photos, it had been lifeless. Now, faint light flickered behind the cracked windows. "Stay in the truck," he said finally, his tone sharper than he intended. "Just for a minute, okay?" Lily frowned. "Why is someone there?" "Maybe," Daniel replied, forcing calm into his voice. "Lock the doors. I'll check." The cold air hit him as he stepped out, sharp metallic and filled with the scent of wood smoke. Somewhere nearby, a loose shutter banged softly in the wind. His boots crunched through patches of frozen mud as he made his way to the porch. Every instinct in him screamed that something was wrong. He reached the door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, firelight flickered, throwing slow shadows across the walls. Daniel pushed the door open with one hand, his other resting instinctively on the heavy flashlight in his jacket pocket. "Hello." His voice was steady but low. "Who's in here?" For a moment, only the pop and crackle of fire answered. Then came the shuffle of movement, hurried footsteps, a sharp breath, the clatter of something falling to the floor. A voice, young female, trembled through the air. Please don't call the police. We'll leave. We just needed somewhere to stay." Daniel froze. His flashlight beam caught movement near the hearth. 3 figures huddled together in the corner, their faces streaked with soot and fear. The oldest couldn't have been more than 25. Her dark hair was tied back, eyes sharp but weary. Beside her stood 2 others, one with trembling hands clutching a blanket, the other half hidden behind them, both her cheeks flushed from the fire's heat. They looked like ghosts, made real, tired, thin, and terrified. Daniel lowered the light slightly but didn't step closer. "This house is mine," he said carefully. "I bought it 6 weeks ago." "Who are you?" "The tallest one." The dark-haired woman swallowed hard. "We didn't know. We thought it was abandoned. We've only been here a few weeks. We've kept it clean, I swear. We didn't mean any harm." The one behind her spoke, her voice shaking but kind. "It's been so cold. We didn't know where else to go." Daniel scanned the room. The floor had been swept. The fireplace, once filled with soot and ash, burned cleanly, safely. A few mismatched blankets were folded neatly in the corner. Someone had even patched the broken window with plastic and tape. Whoever they were, they hadn't come to destroy, they'd come to survive. Daddy. The sound made all three girls turn. Lily stood in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit pressed to her chest. The wind caught her hair tossing curls across her eyes. She blinked at the strangers, unafraid. "I told you to stay in the truck," Daniel said quickly, stepping toward her. "I know, but it's cold," she said softly. "And I saw the fire. I thought maybe we could sit by it too." She tilted her head, studying the three women with open curiosity. "Are they going to live with us?" The question hung in the air like the smoke above the chimney. The youngest woman gave a startled laugh that turned into a sob. "No, sweetheart. We'll be gone soon." "We didn't mean to wait." Daniel's voice stopped her. He looked at Lily, her small hand resting on the doorframe, her eyes full of that same innocent kindness that had somehow survived every loss they'd faced. Then he looked at the women, frightened, exhausted, but alive. Something in their faces reminded him of himself 6 months ago, the hollow look of someone who's run out of places to go. He exhaled slowly. "Sit down," he said at last. The women glanced at each other in disbelief. What the oldest whispered. "Sit," Daniel repeated. "Let's figure this out." The tension in the room shifted, fragile but real. One of them, the youngest, stepped forward first, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Then the others followed. Daniel moved to the hearth, fed another piece of wood into the fire. The flames hissed, then roared, softly filling the silence. Lily climbed onto a chair beside him, her face glowing orange in the light. After a long pause, the oldest woman spoke again, her voice low, cautious. "My name's Harper. This is May, and that's June. We're sisters, Daniel," he said, "and this is my daughter Lily." No one smiled, but something eased a thread of human warmth stretching across the space between them. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, impatient and wild. Inside, the fire crackled like it was holding its breath, waiting. For the first time in months, Daniel felt the faintest spark of something unfamiliar. Not safety, not yet, but possibility. And as Lily leaned closer to the warmth, he couldn't help wondering if maybe, just maybe, this house hadn't been waiting for him to rebuild it, but for all of them. The fire whispered in the stone hearth, sending a thin spiral of smoke toward the cracked ceiling. It filled the silence like a heartbeat, steady, uncertain, alive. Daniel sat on the edge of an old chair, his coat still on hands clasped tight between his knees. Across from him, 3 young women huddled near the fire, their faces lit with flickering gold. They looked half ready to run, like startled birds deciding if they could trust the hand reaching toward them. Lily sat beside him, swinging her legs against the chair, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Her voice, small but steady, broke the tension first. "Are you cold?" she asked the girl closest to the fire. The youngest June, Daniel thought she'd said, gave a startled smile. "A little," she admitted. "But the fire helps." May, the middle sister, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Her eyes darted between Daniel and Harper, the eldest. Harper's back was straight, her jaw tense, as though she'd taken it upon herself to protect the others from whatever came next. Daniel cleared his throat. "You said your names were Harper, May, and June, right?" Harper nodded cautiously. "That's right." "All right," he said slowly. "Then maybe you can tell me how exactly you ended up in my house." The way he said "my house" made June flinch. Harper noticed and spoke quickly. "We didn't mean to take anything that wasn't ours. It was empty, falling apart. We thought no one cared about it anymore." 6 weeks ago, Daniel replied, "I bought this place. Every last dollar I had." May's lips parted in surprise. "You bought it?" This she glanced around at the peeling paint in the patched windows, the roof beams that groaned softly with each gust of wind. Why, Daniel gave a tired half-smile. Because sometimes when you lose everything, you just need somewhere that's still standing, even if it's falling apart. No one spoke for a while after that. The fire crackled, the old clock on the mantel ticked unevenly, and outside the wind pressed against the walls like it wanted in. Finally, Harper said quietly, "We'll leave in the morning. We didn't mean to trespass. We just needed time." Lily looked up, her face illuminated by the firelight. "But where will you go?" The question seemed to hit them like a small, invisible blow. June glanced at Harper, then looked down. May bit her lip. Harper exhaled, voice trembling just slightly. "We don't know yet." Daniel felt the air tighten in his chest. He saw the exhaustion in their posture, the hollow cheeks, the trembling fingers, the kind of fatigue that doesn't come from work, but from fear. He'd seen it in the mirror once, too, in a motel bathroom where the sink didn't drain, and hope was as thin as the walls. He rubbed his palms together, thinking. "You fixed the fireplace?" he asked finally. Harper nodded. It was clogged with soot. June found some tools in the shed. "We just wanted to make sure it was safe before lighting it." "Good job," Daniel murmured. He stood, walking toward the window. The plastic patching rattled softly in the wind. "You sealed this, too." "Yeah," May answered. "We wanted to keep the cold out. It took forever to find the right size boards. Something inside Daniel, something buried deep beneath months of grief and disappointment, stirred." He turned back to them, studying their faces again. They weren't dangerous. They weren't careless. They were just three young women trying to survive the same way he and Lily had been, by holding on to whatever small warmth they could find. Daddy Lily's voice came again, soft but certain. "Can they stay?" "Just for tonight?" Harper's head jerked up. "No," she said quickly. "We can't do that to you. We'll leave. I promise." Daniel looked at his daughter. Her eyes were full of quiet hope, the kind that hurt to see because he knew it came from losing too much too soon. He crouched beside her. "Why do you want them to stay, kiddo? Because—" She looked at the three women, thinking. "Because it's cold. And they look sad. Mommy always said we should help sad people if we can." Daniel's throat tightened. For a second, he couldn't breathe. Melissa's voice echoed in his memory, soft, certain, full of the warmth that used to fill every corner of his life. He stood slowly facing Harper again. "Look," he said, his voice steadier now. "I can't just let you keep living here for free, but I also can't throw you out into the cold. So, here's what I'm thinking." The three sisters looked up at him, confused. "I need help fixing this place. I'm a contractor. Or I was. The house needs new plumbing, wiring, floors, everything. I can't do it all alone." He paused, glancing at Lily. "If you stay, you help with the work. I can't pay you yet, but you'll have a roof, heat, food. We can make it livable together." June blinked disbelief spreading across her face. "You'd really let us stay, Harper?" Hesitated, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Why?" she asked quietly. "You don't even know us." Daniel met her gaze. "Because 6 months ago, I would have given anything for someone to give me a chance." For a moment, no one moved. Then May wiped at her eyes, whispering, "No one's ever said that to us before." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was soft, like the quiet that comes after a storm. June finally smiled, a small shaky thing, but real. "Then we'll help. I can cook. Harper's good with her hands. May keeps everything organized. We'll make it work." Daniel nodded, though he knew what he was doing made no sense. He was trusting three strangers who had broken into his house. But something about the way they sat together, shoulders touching, protecting one another even now, told him he wasn't wrong. "All right then," he said. "We'll start fresh tomorrow. Tonight everyone gets warm, eats something, and rests." Lily clapped her hands, once delighted. "Does that mean they're staying?" Daniel smiled faintly. "For now." He turned back to the fire, tossing another log into the flames. It caught instantly, flaring bright before settling into a steady glow. As Harper and May quietly gathered their few belongings into neat piles, June hummed under her breath a tune Daniel didn't recognize, soft and hopeful. Lily leaned against his arm, already half asleep. The farmhouse creaked around them, its old bones adjusting to the sound of human voices again. For the first time since he'd bought it, the place didn't feel empty. It felt awake. Daniel looked at the three sisters, then down at his daughter, her curls glinting orange in the firelight. He thought of Melissa, of everything he'd lost, and then unexpectedly of everything that might still be waiting. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight at least, the smoke rising from the chimney wasn't a warning anymore. It was a sign of life. The night settled around the farmhouse like an old blanket, thin frayed but warm enough to keep them breathing. The fire sank low, whispering through embers. Somewhere in the walls a mouse ticked along the baseboard, soft as a thought. Daniel lay on the couch with his coat for a pillow and Lily curled under his arm, her small breaths counting time against his ribs. Across the room, the three sisters had made a nest from folded blankets, boots lined up neatly like they were apologizing for taking space. He stared into the quiet glow until it blurred. In the hush, memory rose the sour reek of a motel air conditioner. Lily crying in her sleep, the humiliation of paying for another week with a palm full of wrinkled bills. Melissa's sweater on the back of a chair he never moved, the way grief sat on his chest like an anvil. He swallowed against it. The wood popped softly as if answering him. Before dawn, the wind came up a low, steady hum under the eaves, and a kettle hissed in the kitchen. June must have found the old camping stove. The steam's thin whistle threaded the quiet. When Daniel sat up, his neck cracking, he smelled coffee bitter, saving imperfect. Lily stirred, murmured, then burrowed deeper. Harper glanced over from the hearth posture, straight even in exhaustion. "There's coffee," she said, voice careful. "We found a can in the pantry. Not expired by much." Daniel almost laughed. Not expired by much is still coffee. He rose, pulled the coat tighter around his shoulders, and crossed the floor. The boards answered with familiar creaks. June handed him a tin mug, hands chapped but steady. "Thank you," he said. The heat seeped into his fingers. The first sip clawed and then soothed. He let the quiet hold a beat longer, the way you hold a breath before you jump. "I meant what I said last night," he began. "About a trade. I won't throw you out into the cold, but I can't pretend this isn't my house or that I don't have a daughter to protect. So if we try this, we do it my way." Clear. His voice wasn't unkind, but it left no room to wander. Harper nodded slowly. May tucked hair behind her ear eyes, flicking to Lily and back. June's hands wrapped the kettle handle like a talisman. "Ground rules," Daniel said. "One honesty. No surprises. If you need something, ask. If you mess something up, tell me." He looked at each in turn. "Two work, everyone pulls weight. This place needs wiring, plumbing, floors, insulation. It is not safe until we make it safe." June lifted a tentative hand. "I can cook and do food runs, and I'm strong. I can lift carry whatever you need." "Good," Daniel said, then turned to Harper. "You figured out that fireplace in a night. That tells me you're careful, and you learn fast." Her shoulders eased a fraction. "I'm good with tools if someone shows me once. I did set design in school, and I don't cut corners. Music to my ears." He faced May. "What about you?" May took a breath. "I'm not a builder, but I'm organized. I can make lists, schedules, budget handle calls, paperwork permits, details that keep things on track." "She's a human spreadsheet," June said softly, pride sneaking through her caution. May's mouth curved. Rude, but true. Daniel nodded. "Then this could work. 3 safety. We don't touch electrical without me. We don't climb alone. We don't guess on gas lines. If something feels wrong, it probably is." Harper's jaw set. "Agreed. 4," Daniel added softer. "Respect. For each other. For Lily. For the house. We keep it clean as we go. We don't shout unless something's falling." June's laugh was a small bell in the cold room. The sound lightened everything. And 5, Daniel said, the last one heavier than the others. "We're not family. Not yet. We're strangers trying to build something livable out of what's left. That means we protect this, whatever this is. No drama we can avoid. Speak up before resentment grows teeth." Silence held them. The wind pressed its palm to the windows. The kettle ticked as it cooled. Harper's eyes glossed for an instant. She tried to hide and didn't quite manage. "We can do that," she said. "We will." May's voice thinned. "Why are you doing this for us?" Because 6 months ago he would have begged for the same mercy. Because Melissa's voice still lived in the corners telling him kindness wasn't something you performed. It was a house you kept unlocking. Because Lily had looked at these girls and seen people not trespassers. He let out a long breath that felt like surrender and strength at once. "Because someone gave up on me," he said, "and I promised myself I'd stop giving up on other people." May blinked hard. The tears came anyway, quiet and relieved, the kind that leave a person lighter. June pressed their mugs together in a clumsy toast. "Then maybe this is a miracle," she whispered. Harper inhaled sharply, suspicion and gratitude wrestling in her throat. "If we fail you tell me before you do," Daniel cut in, "and we fix it. No running. That's part of the deal, too." He looked toward the sleeping bundle on the couch. Lily stirred, sat up, hair a wild halo. "Is it morning?" she mumbled. "Does morning mean pancakes?" June brightened. "I can do pancakes. I can do pancakes that smack sadness right out of a kitchen." Lily rubbed her eyes. "That's the kind I like." She squinted at Daniel. "Are they staying?" He knelt so they were eye level. Her breath smelled like sleep. "They're staying," he said. "But we're all working. Even you, supervisor." She grinned. "I can count nails. That's a start." They ate to the music of forks scraping thrift store plates and Lily's commentary about maple syrup being the happy part of trees. Warmth climbed back into their fingers and faces. It felt almost like an ordinary morning in a life that hadn't seen ordinary for a long time. After breakfast, Daniel spread a yellow legal pad on the table. May slid a pen into his hand before he asked. "Materials list," she said. "What's first electric," Daniel answered. "But the line's probably cut at the pole. We'll need a service call to inspect the drop and a temporary panel we can trust." He caught himself slipping into the old cadence of a foreman and let it carry him. "In the meantime, we work daylight. Harper, you and I will walk the structure, mark soft spots, test joists and flag hazards. June, kitchen inventory and a hot thermos for an outside crew. May calls power company county office any back taxes I need to know about before this place bites me." May was already writing the neat rhythm of pen on paper, steadying the room. "Names or numbers I have, a few," Daniel said. Saying it out loud cost him something. Old contacts. He stepped outside to the stoop to make the first call. The air had that early morning bite, metallic and clean. Frost crunched under his boots. He dialed a number he hadn't touched since Seattle, a man who used to be both friend and competitor. The ringtone droned in his ear, thin as a thread. No answer. He tried another. Voicemail. A third. He left a message this time, voice even. "Hey, it's Rourke. I'm back on my feet. Need a consult on a rural temp setup. Call me." When he came back in, Harper had rolled up her sleeves. Lily had dragged a plastic crate close and was plunking nails into piles of 10, whisper-counting each set. June had a skillet singing. May had a row of names growing into a ladder of action. Daniel stood a moment, taking it in the hush and hum of people beginning. The house seemed to tilt toward them, listening. He set the flashlight on the table next to the legal pad and looked each of them in the eye. Then it's decided, he said, steady now, a line drawn that felt right in his bones. "We start today. We start small. We start safe, and we start together." Harper's mouth softened into something like relief. May blew out a breath she'd been carrying since last night. June flipped a pancake high, caught it with a soft smack, and whooped so quietly it was almost a prayer. Daniel reached for his mug, felt the warmth settle into his palm, and said the sentence he wanted the walls to remember, the one he hoped would echo through everything that came next. "No one rebuilds alone, not anymore." The wind paused, as if to hear it. Then the house answered with a gentle sigh in the rafters, and the day opened like a door. The next morning arrived pale and uncertain, like the world wasn't quite sure it wanted to wake up yet. A thin mist hung over the yard, wrapping the broken fence in silver. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and sawdust, the scent of effort of life creeping back into wood that had forgotten what warmth felt like. Daniel stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, blueprint pages spread across a crooked table. The lines were smudged, his handwriting cramped but confident. Harper leaned beside him, scanning the pages as if trying to memorize the bones of the old farmhouse. "So, this is the plan," he said. "Reinforce the porch first. Then we patch the roof, fix the floorboards, and pray the plumbing still remembers how to work." Harper nodded, brushing loose hair behind her ear. "Got it. You give the orders. We follow." June popped her head through the kitchen doorway, a streak of flour on her cheek. "And I feed. Always feed. Workers can't fix things on an empty stomach." Lily giggled from her seat atop a crate, swinging her legs. "You're the food boss." June grinned. "Best title I've ever had." May sat by the window pen, scratching softly as she listed expenses and supplies. Her face was focused but peaceful, the kind of peace that comes from finally having a purpose again. Outside, the day stretched open. The air carried the smell of cold earth and distant pine. Daniel handed Harper a hammer and said, "You ready to make some noise?" Her eyes met his steady, a spark of something new in them. Always. The first nail struck home with a sharp ringing sound that echoed across the empty fields, a sound both fragile and strong. Lily clapped her hands. "It sounds like music," Daniel laughed. "If it's music, then we're the world's loudest band." Hours passed in a rhythm of hammers, saws, and laughter. The house began to breathe again, boards, tightening dust, scattering like ghosts being chased out by sunlight. Daniel worked alongside Harper, showing her how to measure before cutting, how to check alignment by sound as much as sight. "You hear that?" he said, tapping a plank lightly. "That hollow ring means rot underneath. You learn to trust your ears." She nodded, listening carefully before striking again. "So, the house talks if you know how to listen." Daniel smiled. "Exactly." May joined them, mid-morning, sleeves rolled up, notebook forgotten on the porch. She sanded window frames, careful and precise, humming under her breath. June's laughter carried from the kitchen as she discovered the oven actually worked mostly. And Lily, their smallest foreman, inspected every nail. "Daddy, that one's crooked," she said, pointing. Daniel pretended to squint. "That's not crooked, that's artistic." "It's still crooked," Lily declared. "Fine," he said, mock defeated, pulling it out. "Supervisor wins again." The easy banter filled the house like sunlight brushing dust off places none of them had realized were still capable of warmth. By afternoon, Daniel felt something he hadn't in a long time: pride. Not just in the work, but in the noise of living, the scrape of tools, the sound of June's singing, the way Harper laughed when she bent a nail and tried to hide it. It was messy, imperfect, and alive. When the sun started sinking, they gathered near the fire to eat. June had turned pantry scraps into a stew so fragrant it made everyone forget the chill. Lily sat between Harper and May, her eyes wide as she slurped from a tin bowl. "Best dinner I've ever had," she said. June bowed dramatically. "Thank you, Chef June, at your service." Harper chuckled. "You should open a restaurant for tired people who build things badly." Daniel smirked. "So? All of us? Exactly." They laughed, the kind of laughter that shakes the weight off your shoulders for a moment. Later, when Lily drifted to sleep by the fire, the room quieted. The flames painted their faces in amber. Daniel leaned back, stretching sore muscles. "You three work hard," he said quietly. "You didn't have to." Harper looked into the fire. "We did, actually. Doing nothing hurts worse." May nodded. "When Mom died, it was like time stopped. This." She gestured around them, the patched walls, the tools scattered like hope left midair. "This makes it start again." June stirred the coals with a stick. "Mom used to say, work is how you tell the world you're still fighting." Daniel listened. The crackle of fire became the soundtrack of that moment, fragile people choosing not to stay broken. He stood and walked to the wall they'd repaired that morning. Running his fingers along the wood, he felt something catch a thin seam almost invisible. When he pulled gently, a loose plank shifted. Dust fell soft and gray. Hidden inside the gap was a folded envelope yellowed with time. "What's that?" Harper asked. Daniel turned it over. The paper was brittle, the ink faded. He opened it carefully. Inside a single sheet of lined paper written in looping cursive, "To whoever finds this house. If you're reading this, it means you stayed long enough to care. Don't give up. This place can hold more than sorrow. It can hold people together if you let it." RT 1972. They stared at the note in silence. The wind sighed through the chimney like someone exhaling after a long wait. "That's eerie," June whispered. "Beautiful, but eerie." May reached out her fingers, trembling slightly. "It's like the house knew we'd need to hear that." Harper looked at Daniel. "You think it's true that a house can hold people together?" He folded the letter gently and set it on the mantel. "I think maybe it's not about the walls. Maybe it's the work we do inside them." Harper smiled faintly. "Then we're already halfway there." The fire popped, sending a small spray of sparks upward. Daniel caught sight of Lily asleep, her small hand curled around the rabbit, her cheeks flushed from warmth. He thought of the motel again, the ache of those nights, and how tonight, just tonight, it didn't feel so far away anymore. They stayed by the fire until only embers glowed, each of them lost in quiet thought. Outside, frost crept across the windows, but the room stayed warm. As Daniel banked the fire for the night, he whispered more to himself than anyone. "We're fixing more than a house." Harper heard him anyway. "Then let's make sure it stands," she said softly. He looked over, and for a heartbeat something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding. The kind that starts where words end. Upstairs, the old boards groaned, the sound deep and content. The farmhouse seemed to settle into its new purpose, no longer abandoned, no longer silent. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't dread morning. He knew tomorrow would bring more splinters, more work, more exhaustion, and he wanted every bit of it. Because every nail, every sound, every laugh stitched them closer together. As he turned off the last lantern, the words from the letter whispered through his mind. "Don't give up. This place can hold more than sorrow." He believed it now. The next morning dawned gray and wet, the kind of morning where the clouds seemed to sit directly on the roof. Rain tapped against the patched windows in a slow, steady rhythm. Inside, the farmhouse smelled faintly of smoke, damp wood, and June's coffee a strange mix of survival and comfort. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, a mug cooling in his hands, listening to the storm whisper across the fields. Every creak in the walls sounded like a memory trying to speak. Harper was near the window, staring out into the drizzle. Her reflection looked softer than usual, but her jaw was tight. "The roof's holding," she murmured almost to herself. Barely, Daniel replied. "We'll need to replace half the shingles before winter." "We will." Her voice had that quiet certainty that left no room for argument. Behind them, June hummed as she fried something that smelled suspiciously like canned corned beef. "Breakfast of champions," she announced. "And by champions, I mean the desperate." May chuckled faintly from her chairpen, tapping against her notebook. "We're running low on supplies again," she said. "We'll need to stretch what we have." Daniel leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'll make a trip into town after the rain lets up. Hardware store, grocery. See if we can open a tab somewhere." He didn't add if they'll even let me. Lily wandered in hair-tangled eyes heavy with sleep. She climbed into his lap, pressing her cheek against his chest. "It's noisy," she mumbled. "It's just rain," Daniel said softly. "The house is talking to us again." She blinked up at him. "What's it saying?" He smiled. "That it's still standing." That earned him a sleepy grin before she asked, "Are we fixing it today?" "After breakfast," Harper answered. "Even ghosts get a rain day." June snorted. "Speak for yourself. I've got dishes." The word ghosts hung in the air longer than it should have. Harper must have felt it too because she sat back down, elbows on the table, eyes far away. You ever feel like the past just lives with you? Like it never really leaves? Daniel glanced at her. Every day. May put her pen down. Then maybe we should stop pretending we're not carrying it. She looked at her sisters, then at Daniel. We've all been pretending we're just tired or unlucky, but we're more than that. We're survivors of things that broke us. Silence. Only the rain answered. It was Harper who finally spoke. Our mom worked at a grain mill outside of Montpellier, she began. Long shifts, night shifts didn't matter. She used to say the machines never stopped because people's hunger never stopped. Her voice thinned. Last year, one of the machines jammed. The safety lock failed. It crushed her shoulder, broke her spine. The company blamed her. May's eyes glistened. They said she ignored protocol. They refused compensation. We fought it until the bills ate everything. June stopped stirring the pan, her lips trembling. When she died, they sent a letter. Just a letter. No apology, no help. Just a final bill for services rendered. Harper's hands tightened into fists. That's when we packed up. Drove west. Tried to outrun the debt, the pitying looks, the feeling that everything good was behind us. Daniel listened without interrupting. The storm filled the gaps between their words, rain slipping off the roof like tears sliding from a face. I know that feeling, he said quietly. 8 months ago, my wife Melissa was hit by a drunk driver. She was on her way home from work. It was raining then too. His voice faltered. I told myself I could fix everything. Sell the business, move somewhere cheaper, start over. But it turns out you can't build over grief. You have to live in it first. Harper's gaze softened. You sold your company? Everything, he said. The tools, the truck, even her piano. This house was all I could afford. $15,000 for a dream with broken windows. June's voice trembled. But you're fixing it. Trying to, Daniel said. Because maybe fixing something broken is how you remember that you still can. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lily, who had been listening more than any of them realized, looked up from his lap. So, Mommy's gone, and your Mommy's gone too. May nodded gently. Yeah, sweetie. They are. Lily tilted her head. Do you think they know we're together now? The question stopped them cold. Harper swallowed hard. I like to think so. June blinked away tears. If they could see us right now, all of us sitting here still fighting, they'd be proud. Daniel brushed a curl from Lily's forehead. Your mom used to say love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. Maybe this is what it looks like now. Lily thought about that, then nodded satisfied. Then we should make it pretty. Her innocent certainty broke the heaviness in the room. Harper smiled small and aching. We're trying, kiddo. After breakfast, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Harper and Daniel went to inspect the roof from the attic crawlspace. The wood smelled of rot and history dust shimmering in slivers of light through the boards. This beam here, Daniel said, tapping it, it's holding too much weight. We'll brace it tomorrow. Harper crouched beside him, running her fingers along the old timber. You ever think about how many storms it's seen? He looked at her. Maybe that's why it's still here. It learned how to bend without breaking. Their eyes met, not in romance but in quiet recognition. Two people held together by loss, finding steadiness in work. Downstairs, June started humming again, a low tune that wrapped itself around the sound of dripping rain. It wasn't cheerful exactly, it was hopeful, like the sound of someone daring to believe in better days. By evening, the house glowed again with lamplight. May sat with Lily, teaching her how to write a thank you list. Harper cleaned tools, and June cooked another miracle from scraps. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching them. It struck him suddenly how ordinary it looked, 4 people in a half-ruined farmhouse laughing over burnt biscuits and wet boots. Ordinary, but alive. When Lily went to bed, she whispered, "Daddy, can we stay here forever?" He hesitated, tucking the blanket under her chin. "We'll stay as long as this house keeps us safe." She smiled sleepily. Then we'll help it stay safe." He kissed her forehead and turned off the lamp. Outside, the rain had stopped. The stars, faint and few, blinked through breaks in the clouds. Daniel stepped onto the porch. Harper was already there, sipping from a chipped mug, shoulders wrapped in a blanket. "She's special," Harper said quietly. "Lily. She sees things the way we forgot how to. She's her mother's heart in a smaller body," Daniel said. They stood in silence for a while, the night breathing around them. The house creaked, settling deeper into the earth as if listening to their quiet confessions. Harper turned to him. "You think we're really rebuilding something here?" He looked out across the dark field, the outline of the farmhouse glowing behind them like a beacon. "I think we already are." Inside, a soft laugh escaped June as she burned another pancake on the stove. May scolded her gently. The sound carried through the night like proof of life. For the first time since he'd bought this house, Daniel didn't feel like it was haunted. Maybe he thought the only ghosts left here were the ones they brought, and maybe they were learning how to live with them. The snow came early that year, soft at first, then thick enough to muffle sound. The world outside the farmhouse disappeared beneath white, but inside the rhythm of work carried on. Hammers, laughter, the scrape of sandpaper, these had become their soundtrack. By December, the house had started to feel almost whole. The drafty gaps were sealed, the roof held strong, and Daniel had fixed the worst of the wiring. He moved through the rooms with quiet pride, sometimes touching the walls like an old friend who had survived the same storm. That morning, Lily's giggles echoed through the hall. She was chasing June's music, literal music. June had found a dusty, upright piano abandoned in the shed, its keys yellowed and uneven, but she'd insisted on dragging it inside. "It's hopeless," Harper had said. June grinned, already wiping grime from the keys. "Then it fits right in with the rest of us." Now the piano stood in the living room, half-tuned and wholly alive. June played softly, fingers testing chords, her humming low and warm. Lily sat beside her, pressing random notes that somehow worked a messy duet between innocence and hope. Daniel paused in the doorway, leaning against the frame. The melody filled the air, shaky but beautiful, curling around the sound of crackling fire. For the first time in months, the house wasn't just shelter, it was music. June noticed him and smiled. "Didn't know I had an audience." "You do now," Daniel said. "What song is that?" "It's one my mom wrote." June replied, still playing. She used to hum it when she couldn't sleep. Said it reminded her that everything broken still makes a sound. Lily looked up at her. "Can you teach me?" "Of course, tiny apprentice." June winked. May entered holding a clipboard and a steaming mug of tea. "If you're teaching Lily, then at least teach her rhythm. She claps on the wrong beats." "I do not," Lily protested. Harper, passing through with a bundle of nails, added dryly, "You both do." The laughter that followed was light, unguarded, the kind that happens only when people stop holding their breath around each other. That evening, the snow thickened. The world outside went quiet again, and inside they gathered by the fire. June brewed cocoa from powdered milk, and Lily announced she was now officially the assistant piano teacher of Vermont. When the laughter faded, Harper leaned her head against the wall. "You know what's strange," she said softly. "It's been months since I've woken up scared. I used to dream we were still running. But lately, when I dream I see this house." Daniel nodded. "I know that kind of quiet. It's rare. Feels fragile." May sipped her cocoa. "That's because we're learning how to be safe again. Safety's not walls. It's people." Daniel looked at her. "Did you learn that from your psychology classes?" She smiled faintly. "No. I learned it from watching you and Lily." Her words hit deeper than she probably meant. Daniel stared into the fire, its light pulsing across his face. There was still a part of him that couldn't believe this life, this accidental family, was real. After Lily went to bed, he found himself in the kitchen, sorting through bills and sketches. He was halfway through calculating insulation costs when a soft knock came from the doorway. It was Harper. She wore a gray sweater, her hair loose for once, her face pale in the lamplight. "You ever stop working?" she asked. Not if I can help it, Daniel said. She stepped inside, folding her arms. May's worried about money again. She won't say it, but I can tell. She's been skipping meals. Daniel frowned. We'll get through. I've got some old contacts in Burlington who might throw me a small job once the snow clears. And until then, he said we keep fixing this place. Work keeps us moving. Hope follows motion. Harper leaned against the counter, studying him. You sound like someone who's been running on hope for a long time. He smiled ruefully. It's the only thing I've got that doesn't need electricity. Her laugh was soft, reluctant. You know, when we first met you, I thought you were crazy. I probably was, he admitted. But... She hesitated. You took us in when no one else would. You didn't ask for anything back except honesty and work. That kind of kindness, it's rare. Daniel looked at her, trying to read what sat behind her words. There was gratitude, yes. But there was also something gentler, something beginning. Before he could answer, a faint melody floated through the house, June playing again. It was the same tune from earlier, but slower, more deliberate. Each note lingered like a heartbeat. Harper turned toward the sound. That song. She used to play it when Mom was in the hospital. I hated it back then. Why? Because it meant Mom couldn't sleep. Because it meant she was in pain. Her voice caught. Now it feels different, like she's still here somehow. Daniel reached for the kettle, buying himself a moment before speaking. Maybe she is, in the ways that matter. Harper smiled through the shimmer in her eyes. You really believe that I have to, he said. Otherwise I'd never get out of bed. They stood there a moment, listening. The house seemed to breathe, with the music walls creaking softly, pipes humming, faintly wind tapping the windows in time. When the last note faded, June's voice called from the living room. Hey, we're taking song requests, Harper laughed, wiping her eyes. You got anything cheerful? Define cheerful, June shouted back. Lily's small voice followed. Play the happy one, the one with the jumping parts. June struck a few bright chords, and laughter rippled through the house again. Daniel shook his head, smiling. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Daniel sat alone in the living room. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows. The piano stood silent now, but the echo of June's song lingered. He thought of Melissa, of her laughter, her quiet singing while cooking dinner, her habit of leaving little notes in his toolbox. He wondered what she'd think of this unlikely family he'd built without meaning to. A gentle creak broke his thoughts. He turned. May stood at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a blanket. Couldn't sleep, he asked. She shook her head. Too much noise in here. She tapped her temple. But good noise for once. He nodded. You're not the only one. She smiled sleepily. You know, Daniel, Mom used to say every storm leaves its own kind of music behind. Maybe that's what this is. The sound of what survived. Her words landed softly like snow. When she disappeared back upstairs, Daniel leaned back, closed his eyes, and listened to the crackle of embers, to the faint whistle of wind under the eaves, to the echo of 3 sisters and 1 little girl asleep under the same roof. It wasn't silence. It was harmony, imperfect, fragile human. He whispered to the empty room, maybe that's enough. And somewhere deep within the walls, the house seemed to agree. By February, the world outside was white and quiet, but inside the farmhouse the walls hummed with new energy. Daniel had begun to believe they were winning against weather, against time, against everything that had tried to bury them. The wiring was safe. The floors were solid. The laughter was louder. Until the storm came. It started at midnight, a low growl of thunder rolling across the Vermont hills, followed by the sharp ping of ice pellets against the windows. Daniel woke to the sound of wind forcing its way through the old seams of the house. He sat up, heart thudding, already listening like a man who expected bad news. Then came the drip. One at first, then another. Slow, deliberate, right above his bed. He swung his legs to the floor and stepped into icy water. Damn it, he muttered. He grabbed a flashlight, its beam slicing through the dark. The roof was leaking a narrow but steady stream tracing down the wall. He followed it up the stairs to the attic. The door groaned when he pushed it open, releasing a draft of cold that bit into his skin. Inside, water seeped through a crack near the ridge beam, falling onto insulation like soft applause. Daniel's breath fogged in the beam of light. He pressed a hand against the wood, soaked through. The patch they'd made last month hadn't held. Behind him came the faint creak of a floorboard. Daniel Harper's voice, half asleep but steady. She appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, flashlight in hand. "What's wrong?" "Roof's given in," he said. "I thought we fixed this section." She stepped closer, frowning at the leak. "We did. Must have shifted with the ice." A crash of wind rattled the windows below. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I should have seen this coming." Harper's tone softened. "Hey, you can't fight the sky. I can damn well try." He turned, already moving toward the ladder. "Grab buckets, towels. We'll need to get the water out before it ruins the beams." Minutes later, the whole house was awake. May appeared in a hoodie, eyes wide with confusion. June stumbled in, still wearing her slippers. Lily came too, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. "What's happening?" she asked. "Just a little rain sneaking in," Daniel said quickly. "Nothing to worry about." But the truth was, it wasn't little. The leak spread fast, one crack feeding another. They scrambled to contain it. Buckets clanged, water splashed. Harper climbed the ladder beside him, passing tools without needing to be asked. May ran downstairs for rags. June began mopping the hall, singing under her breath like the noise might keep fear away. "You shouldn't be up here," Daniel said to Harper as he hammered in a new brace. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," she shot back. Another gust of wind hit the roof. The beam above them groaned. Daniel's hammer slipped. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He cursed under his breath. Harper reached out instinctively, steadying the board. "Careful," she warned. "If that beam goes, we'll both be swimming." Despite everything, Daniel laughed, breathless, disbelieving. "You always this calm in a disaster." "Only when I'm terrified." "Good, then we're both calm." Below them, June yelled, "We're running out of buckets." "Use the pots," May shouted back, and the mixing bowls. Lily's voice joined them. "I'll help too." Daniel froze. "Lily, no. Stay downstairs." But it was too late. Her small footsteps were already climbing the stairs. Harper climbed down halfway, meeting her on the steps. "Hey," Supervisor Harper said, gently kneeling to Lily's level. "We've got a really important job for you, okay? Someone has to hold the flashlight for your dad. Can you do that from right here?" Lily nodded, serious as a soldier. "Yes, ma'am." Harper winked. "That's my girl." Daniel exhaled slowly. His pulse began to steady. Together, he and Harper worked through the worst of it, patching with tar cloth ceiling gaps with strips of metal they'd found in the shed. The sound of rain softened to a patter, then to nothing but the groan of settling wood. 2 hours later, the storm began to fade. The house smelled of wet earth and sweat. The buckets were full, but the ceiling held. Daniel sat down hard on the top step chest, heaving. Harper sank beside him, head tilted back against the wall. They sat in silence, their breaths mixing in the cold air. June poked her head up from below. "I think we won." "Sort of." May followed, wiping her face with her sleeve. "If this place survives one more storm, I'll start believing in miracles." Lily climbed up carefully, flashlight still clutched in her small hand. "Did we save it?" Daniel looked at her and smiled. "Yeah, kiddo. We saved it." She grinned proud. "See, I told you teamwork works better than storms." That line hit him like a quiet truth. Out of the mouths of children, he thought. When the others went back downstairs, Daniel stayed behind to check the beams one last time. Harper lingered too. "You could have yelled at us for getting in your way," she said softly. "But you didn't." "I wanted to," he admitted. "But yelling doesn't fix leaks." Harper smiled faintly. "You're learning." He glanced at her. You sound surprised. I'm not, she said. Just proud. The word landed heavier than either expected. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full. Downstairs, June started humming again that same tune she always fell back on when things felt broken. The melody drifted up the stairs, wrapping around them like a lullaby for the exhausted. Harper rubbed her hands together for warmth. You ever think about how strange it is? How 4 people who didn't even know each other 6 months ago are now fixing leaks at 2 in the morning like a family. Daniel smiled. I think about it every day. You think it'll last? He looked at the patched roof, the buckets lined like trophies, the faint light of dawn creeping through the cracks. If we keep showing up when it leaks, he said, Yeah, I think it will. A beat passed. Then Harper leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Not an invitation a moment. A quiet acknowledgement of the night they'd held the house together with little more than willpower and faith. Daniel didn't move away. Outside, the storm gave one last sigh and moved east. By morning, sunlight returned, sliding across the wet floorboards like forgiveness. June brewed strong coffee. May hung blankets to dry, and Lily announced that she had a storm badge, now proof she'd been brave. Harper teased Daniel about his grumpy roof face. He grumbled, but smiled anyway. When he stepped outside to breathe the cold, clean air, the farmhouse stood proud against the pale sky, patched, imperfect, and still standing. And in that moment, Daniel understood something. Survival wasn't about building walls strong enough to keep the world out. It was about finding people willing to hold the roof when the rain came in. He looked back toward the open door where laughter spilled into the morning light and whispered almost to the house itself, Not alone. Not anymore. By the time the last of the snow began to melt, the farmhouse had settled into a kind of rhythm, not perfect but steady. The days smelled like sawdust and coffee. The nights were a mix of exhaustion and laughter. For the first time in years, Daniel could wake without that familiar ache of dread in his chest. The roof didn't leak anymore. The pipes ran clean. Lily had learned to braid her own hair. It felt almost normal. Almost. Then came the letter. It arrived one Tuesday morning, delivered by a mail truck that barely bothered with their road. May found it wedged under a hardware invoice, her name printed neatly on the envelope. She frowned, turning it over. The return address read, Green Valley Medical Center, the hospital where their mother had died. Harper noticed the change in her sister's face. What is it? I don't know, May said quietly. It's from Vermont. From them. The others gathered as she tore it open. The paper inside was thin official stamped in the corner with a logo. Daniel watched her eyes move left to right faster than freeze. What is it? Harper asked again, sharper this time. May swallowed hard. It's a legal notice, some kind of review. She took a shaky breath. They're reopening Mom's case. The room went still. June blinked. Reopening? Why would they do that? May's voice shook. It says a former employee came forward. Something about falsified safety reports. About the machine that hurt her. Harper snatched the paper, scanning the lines, her face pale. They're admitting fault, she whispered. After all this time. Daniel frowned. Does that mean compensation? May nodded slowly. If it's true, the company could owe everything they denied. Back pay, medical costs, damages. June's hands trembled as she reached for the letter. You mean Mom didn't die because she made a mistake? May's eyes filled. No, she died because they lied. The air in the room seemed to change. Harper's knuckles went white against the paper. Daniel could see something behind her expression, not just grief, but the dangerous brittle spark of justice long denied. I'm calling them, Harper said. May reached out. Harper, no. Her voice broke low and furious. They made us think it was her fault. They made us believe she was careless. We lost everything because of it. I'm not letting them bury it again. Daniel stepped closer, steady but calm. You'll need proof, and probably a lawyer. Harper's shoulders sagged. We can't afford that. Maybe not yet, he said, but we can start gathering what we can. I used to file insurance reports for my business contracts documentation. If the evidence exists, we'll find it." May looked up, startled. "You'd help us?" Daniel hesitated only a second. "Of course. You're part of this house now." Something softened in Harper's face. "You don't have to, I know," he said simply. "That's why I will." For the next few days, the house turned into an impromptu command center. May organized every document they could find. Harper called county clerks, old co-workers, anyone who might remember their mother. Daniel helped draft emails and gather forms. June kept spirits up, cooking more than anyone could eat and humming her mother's song while she worked. Even Lily tried to help. She sat beside Daniel coloring while he typed, whispering encouragement every few minutes. "You can do it, Daddy. You fix everything." He smiled but didn't answer. He was thinking of Melissa, of how she'd always been the one to fight with quiet persistence when life was unfair. Somehow, working for the Quinn sisters felt like honoring her memory. By Friday, they had enough to file an official inquiry. The submission went out by email and post. And then came the waiting. That weekend, Harper barely slept. Daniel found her on the porch late one night staring into the dark. The sky was moonless, but the air carried the faint scent of thawing earth, a promise that spring wasn't far. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her at that hospital. The machines, the beeping, and the way she looked at me when she realized she'd never walk again. And I just left her there to fight alone." Daniel leaned against the railing beside her. "You didn't leave her. You were kids trying to keep her alive. That's not failure." Harper shook her head. She always said she trusted the system, the people who were supposed to protect her, and they failed her. He looked out across the fields. "People fail each other all the time. The trick is what you do after." She glanced at him. "You sound like someone who learned that the hard way." "I did." The wind picked up scattering bits of frost from the railing. Harper turned the letter over in her hands, its creases soft from being read too many times. "If this goes through, if they admit fault, maybe it'll mean something. Maybe we can stop running." Daniel nodded. "Then let's make sure it does mean something." A week later, the phone rang. May answered. The call was from the legal office representing the hospital. They confirmed the reports a machine part had been defective for years. Records were altered to hide it. A lawsuit was already forming. When she hung up, May's voice was shaking. "They're settling," she said. "They want to meet." June let out a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "We're going to be okay." Harper's hands trembled. "Maybe not okay," she said, "but closer than we've been in a long time." Daniel felt an unfamiliar weight lift from the room. Hope didn't rush in like sunlight. It crept cautious but real. That night they celebrated with pizza from town, a luxury they hadn't dared in months. Lily helped light candles, calling it the thank you dinner. June made her say grace, which turned into an impromptu list of everyone she loved, her dad, Harper, May, June, and the house that finally stopped leaking. When the laughter faded, Harper looked at Daniel. "You didn't have to fight for us," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Maybe. But I know what it's like to need someone who won't walk away." Her eyes glistened. "We're not used to people staying." Daniel's answer came without thinking. "Then get used to it." May reached across the table, touching Harper's hand. "Mom would have liked him." June grinned. She would have adopted him. They laughed again, and for a moment, grief felt like something that had shape, something they could hold together, not something that held them hostage. Later, when everyone else had gone to bed, Daniel lingered by the fire. The letter from the hospital lay folded on the mantel beside the old note they'd found in the wall months ago. "Don't give up. This place can hold more than sorrow." He touched both papers gently. The one from the past, the one from the present. Proof that sometimes even the worst stories could be rewritten if you kept believing in the truth. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of thawing soil, the first real breath of spring. And Daniel realized something. It wasn't just the house that was being rebuilt. It was all of them. Spring came quietly to Vermont like the world was holding its breath before remembering how to bloom again. The snow melted into rivulets that whispered down the hill, and the earth, dark and forgiving, waited beneath. Around the farmhouse, the smell of wet soil mingled with sawdust, and for the first time, green pushed through the brown. Daniel stood on the porch that morning, mug in hand, watching sunlight stretch across the yard. The house behind him creaked in its usual way, but now it sounded less like protest and more like a sigh of contentment. Inside, he could hear the faint clatter of dishes, June's humming Lily's voice rising with questions about everything, always everything. "Daddy," she called from the doorway. "June says we're going to make a garden. Is that true?" Daniel turned. June stood behind her, cheeks flushed with excitement, holding a packet of old seeds. "It's not just a rumor," she said. "We're going to grow food." Harper appeared next, wiping her hands on her jeans. "You mean we're going to try," she said dryly. June grinned. "That's the spirit of pessimism I've been missing." May followed last, clutching her planner. "Let's not underestimate how complicated it is." Soil, pH, spacing, irrigation. June cut her off, waving a hand. "May, it's dirt and hope. We've got both." Lily giggled, and Daniel found himself smiling, despite everything. "Where do you want it?" he asked. June pointed toward the back field where wild grass had already started reclaiming what was once a yard. "There. It gets sun all day. We'll clear it out till the soil and plant the basics: tomatoes, lettuce, herbs. Oh, and strawberries." Lily's orders. Lily clapped her hands. Strawberries. That afternoon they began. The air was thick with the smell of turned earth, and the steady rhythm of shovels striking soil created its own kind of music. Harper worked beside Daniel, clearing rocks and roots, her hair tied back with a bandana. May marked neat rows with twine, muttering about crop rotation and yield efficiency. June dug barefoot, laughing as dirt streaked her arms. "You look like a kid again," Harper teased. "That's the point," June said, brushing hair from her face. "You can't heal if you don't play in the dirt once in a while." Daniel watched them work, and something in his chest loosened. It was strange how ordinary this felt. How right. He joined them, driving stakes into the ground while Lily filled small pots with soil. She was serious about her task tongue sticking out as she pressed each seed into place. "Why do we bury them, Daddy?" she asked. "So they can grow," he said. "But how do they breathe?" "They find a way," he said softly. "Everything that wants to live does." Harper looked up at him, then just a glance, but something in her expression said she understood exactly what he meant. By evening, the garden was marked and ready. The sun dipped low, painting the field in gold. June leaned on her shovel, surveying their work. "Look at that," she said. "A masterpiece of mud." May laughed. "You mean chaos?" "Same thing," June replied. Daniel wiped his hands on his jeans. "It's not much yet, but it's ours." Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Can we name it?" He smiled. "What do you think?" She thought for a moment, then announced proudly, "The Garden of Second Chances." Everyone paused. Harper's breath caught. May blinked hard. Even June went quiet. "Perfect," Daniel said softly. "Exactly that." They ended the day on the porch, boots, muddy shoulders aching, but hearts lighter. June handed out mugs of lemonade while Lily curled up beside Daniel, already half asleep. The air smelled of fresh soil and promise. "Do you ever think," May said quietly, "that maybe this was supposed to happen? That all the terrible things brought us here for a reason?" Harper shook her head. "I don't think the world works like that." "Maybe not," Daniel said, staring out at the darkening field. "But sometimes the place you end up feels like the one that's been waiting for you." Silence settled, but it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Over the next few weeks, the garden became their rhythm. Every morning, Lily watered the rows with a tin can almost bigger than she was. Harper built a small fence to keep deer away, and June experimented with compost, insisting it was like cooking, but for the ground. May kept meticulous notes in her ledger, tracking growth, temperature, rainfall, hope quantified in handwriting. One afternoon, Daniel returned from town with supplies and found Harper kneeling in the soil, whispering something to the plants. "You talking to them?" he asked. She looked up, smiling sheepishly. "Don't mock me. It helps them grow." He crouched beside her. "What did you tell them that they're safe now?" she said. "That we won't abandon them." He didn't answer right away. The sunlight hit her hair just right, catching threads of gold. For a second, the world seemed to pause. "Maybe we should tell ourselves that too," he murmured. Her smile faded, replaced by something softer. "Maybe we should." That night, they celebrated their first sprout, a single stubborn leaf pushing through the soil. Lily ran inside, shouting about it like a miracle. June laughed until she cried. Harper took a photo on Daniel's old phone. May wrote day 17, first sign of life in her notebook, and underlined it twice. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, Daniel sat by the window overlooking the garden. The moonlight silvered the rows of dirt, making them look like quiet scars across the earth, scars that were healing. He thought about how far they'd come. From fear to trust. From silence to laughter. From running to planting roots. He didn't notice Harper until she spoke from the doorway. "Can't sleep." He shook his head, just thinking. About what? He nodded toward the window. "That garden out there. It's going to take months before anything grows. Maybe longer, but still, we planted it anyway." She crossed the room, sitting across from him. "That's what faith looks like, I guess." He smiled faintly. "I used to think faith was about believing things would be perfect. Now I think it's about believing they'll be worth it, even if they're not." Harper studied him, the firelight flickering across her face. "You're a good man, Daniel." He met her eyes. "You don't know that." "I do," she said softly. "You're the kind of person who keeps showing up even when everything's falling apart." He looked away, his throat tightening. "You make it sound simple. Maybe it is." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full of everything they didn't need to say yet. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, brushing over the new garden, over the house, over the people who were finally starting to believe in each other. Lily murmured in her sleep from the other room as if dreaming aloud. "The strawberries are growing," she whispered. Daniel smiled. Maybe she was right. Maybe they all were. Because in that moment, sitting beside Harper with the smell of earth and wood smoke in the air, Daniel realized that some seeds don't wait for perfect conditions, they grow simply because someone cared enough to plant them. And just like that, spring felt real. By late summer, the garden was alive. Rows of green shimmered under the sun, tomatoes heavy with fruit herbs spilling over their beds, and strawberries so sweet that Lily swore they tasted like tiny suns. The farmhouse smelled of rosemary and baked bread of life that had learned how to stay. Daniel stood by the fence one morning, the earth warm under his boots, watching Lily chase butterflies between rows of beans. Her laughter carried across the field like wind chimes. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. Harper stepped out, wiping her hands on a towel. "You're staring," she teased. Daniel smiled. "Just making sure my foreman isn't slacking off." "She's doing better than most grown-ups," Harper said, leaning against the post beside him. Her hair was tied up, wisps escaping to frame her face. The air between them felt easy now, comfortable in a way that came only from shared work and late nights fixing things together. The past few months had changed them all. May was planning to enroll in night classes for accounting. June had started selling her baked goods at the weekend market muffins that vanished before noon. And Harper, she'd become Daniel's right hand in the restoration business. The company he thought he'd lost was breathing again. He turned to her. "Got a call from Burlington this morning. The Landon project wants to move forward. They're hiring us." Her eyes widened. "Seriously?" Daniel nodded. "They said they liked our hands-on integrity. I think that's code for we can't afford the fancy guys." Harper laughed. "Still, that's amazing." "You did it." He shook his head. "We did it. Couldn't have done any of this without you." For a second, she just looked at him, and in that small silence was something fragile, something waiting. Before either could say more, June's voice rang out from the porch. "Lunch is up, and it's actually edible this time," Lily shouted from the field. "That's not true. Last time it was great." June laughed. "See, a real critic." They all gathered around the table outside wooden planks Daniel and Harper had salvaged from an old barn. May brought lemonade. June served sandwiches. Lily added wildflowers to the center, insisting every meal deserved decoration. Conversation flowed easily until May, ever the pragmatic one, broke the gentle rhythm. "We need to talk about what's next," she said. "The house is nearly finished, the garden's thriving, the business is running. What do we do now?" June grinned. "We live May. That's what we do. I mean, long term," May clarified. "We can't all just stay here forever, can we?" The question hung in the air. Harper looked down at her plate. "Why not?" Because May said softly, "Maybe the whole point of rebuilding was to move forward." Daniel felt the words settle in his chest. She was right, and yet the thought of change, of losing this strange, beautiful chaos, twisted something inside him. He cleared his throat. "There's no rule saying moving forward means leaving behind. Maybe it's just about expanding what we've built." Lily, who had been listening, quietly piped up, "We can build another house, right next to this one. For everyone." They all laughed, but Harper's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that evening after dinner and dishes and Lily's endless bedtime story, Daniel found Harper on the porch again. The sky was painted in deep blues and fading golds. Fireflies drifted near the grass, blinking like tiny lanterns. "You've been quiet," he said. She didn't look up. "May's right, you know. We can't stay frozen here. The settlement from the lawsuit came through last week. It's enough for us to start over anywhere we want." Daniel leaned against the railing. "Anywhere." She nodded. "A house near town. Maybe start a business. A real one. May's good with numbers. June's already halfway to being a chef. We could finally stop scraping by." "And you?" he asked gently. "What would you do?" She smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe design houses instead of fixing them. Maybe plant gardens that never had to start over." He looked out at the field, the wind moving through it like water. "You deserve that, Harper." "All of you do." Her voice softened. "You say that like you won't be there to see it." Daniel turned toward her, the porch light catching his face. "I just don't want to be the reason you don't take the next step." She held his gaze. "And what if you're the reason I want to stay?" The air between them stilled. The chirp of crickets filled the silence. Daniel swallowed hard. "Harper." "Don't," she said quietly. "If this is wrong timing, I understand. But I needed you to know. I've spent months pretending it was just about gratitude, but it's not. I care about you, Daniel. Not as the man who saved us, but as the man who lets people save him back." He exhaled slowly, his heart thudding against the quiet. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," he admitted. "Melissa's been gone for a year, but some days it still feels like yesterday. I'm scared, Harper. Scared that loving someone again means betraying what I already lost." Her eyes softened. "You're not replacing her. You're continuing her lesson." He frowned. "Lesson. That love doesn't end when someone's gone. It just changes shape, like the seasons." For a long moment, neither spoke. The night held them fragile, infinite. Then, quietly, Daniel reached for her hand. Her fingers were warm, calloused from work, familiar now. He didn't pull her close, didn't make promises. He just held on like a man learning what it felt like to be steady again. After a while, Harper leaned her head against his shoulder. "You don't have to rush anything," she whispered. "Just don't shut the door before it's even open." He nodded. "I can do that." They stayed like that, watching the stars slide across the sky. Inside, June hummed from the kitchen and the faint sound of May's laughter drifted through the open window. Lily's voice carried sleepily from upstairs, asking the air if the strawberries were dreaming too. Daniel smiled. This he said softly. This right here, it feels like something worth keeping. Harper's hand tightened around his. Then keep it, she whispered. Keep us. The wind shifted warm and gentle, carrying the scent of the garden of mint and soil and promise. And for the first time, Daniel didn't think about endings. He thought about beginnings that dared to grow from loss. He thought about what love looked like when it wasn't trying to fix anything, when it just stayed. The stars above the farmhouse burned brighter, and the house itself seemed to breathe with them, alive, listening whole. Tomorrow would bring decisions and maybe even goodbyes. But tonight there was peace. And peace, Daniel realized, was just another word for home. A year later, the farmhouse stood quiet on the hill, wrapped in the soft gold of late spring. The once sagging roof gleamed with new shingles. The windows, once patched with plastic, now caught the morning light and threw it back like laughter. What had been broken now breathed, and what had been lost had somehow grown into something beautiful. Daniel parked the old pickup at the edge of the driveway and just sat there for a moment listening. The wind moved through the grass like the whisper of an old song. From inside the cab, Lily's voice broke the silence. "Daddy," she said, pointing through the windshield. "It's still here." "It's still here," Daniel echoed. The backseat door opened and Harper stepped out, her dress fluttering in the warm breeze. Her hand brushed against his as she passed, and even after all this time that simple touch still steadied him. May and June followed, unloading picnic baskets, laughter spilling into the air. The four of them, no five, now walked toward the farmhouse together, the house that had been their beginning. Lily ran ahead, her curls bouncing. "It looks smaller," she called out. Harper smiled. "That's what happens when you grow." They reached the porch. The boards creaked the same way. They always had a sound that felt more like welcome than warning. Daniel brushed a hand over the railing he'd rebuilt with Harper last summer. "You held up, old friend," he murmured. June set down the basket and stretched. "Feels strange, doesn't it? Like visiting an old version of ourselves." May nodded. "The ghosts are quieter now." "Maybe they learned to rest," Harper said softly. They stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of pine and dust, the scent of time passing but not forgetting. Sunlight streamed through the clean glass, painting bright shapes across the floor. Lily spun in a circle. "Can we live here again?" Daniel smiled. "We already have a home, kiddo." But this one started everything Lily said. "It's like where we became us." Her words caught Harper off guard. She blinked quickly, her eyes softening. "She's right." They wandered from room to room, each step echoing with memories. The fireplace still held the mark where Lily had once drawn a crooked heart in chalk. The kitchen table, the same one Daniel had built from salvaged wood, stood in the corner, scarred but solid. Harper ran her hand along its edge. "Remember the night we thought the roof would cave in?" Daniel chuckled. "And June declared we were all going to die artistically." June laughed from the doorway. "I stand by that. If you're going out, go out creative." They lingered in the living room where the light was strongest. Daniel's eyes fell on the mantel. 2 framed photos stood there, now placed during one of their last visits. One was of Melissa smiling beneath a summer sky. The other was of the Quinn sisters, mother hands covered in flour, mid-laugh. Between them sat the yellowed note they'd found in the wall so long ago. "Don't give up. This place can hold more than sorrow." Harper noticed him looking. She reached for his hand. "I think it's time," she said quietly. He nodded. From the picnic basket, May pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a deed transfer. The farmhouse was now registered under the Second House Co-op. A place for people starting over. A place for anyone who needed a chance. "They'll come here?" Lily asked, peering up at them. Harper knelt down, tucking a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Yes. People who've lost their homes, their hope. They'll rebuild like we did. And when they're ready, they'll move on, too." Lily considered that, then smiled. "So it's like the house gets to help again." "Exactly," Harper said. "Just like us." Outside, birds called from the trees. The garden, though wild, now still bloomed. The strawberries had survived the winter, clinging stubbornly to the soil. Daniel walked over and knelt to pick one. He turned it in his palm before offering it to Lily. "Go on," he said. She bit into it and grinned. "It tastes the same." "Some things don't change," he said. They spread the picnic blanket in the grass behind the house. June unpacked sandwiches and cold lemonade. May fussed over a checklist, muttering about donation logistics. Harper leaned back against Daniel's shoulder, eyes closed, the sunlight catching the faint gold in her hair. "You know she said this time last year I couldn't imagine any of this." Daniel looked out at the horizon. "Neither could I." "You think Melissa and Mom know?" He smiled. "If they do, I hope they're proud of the mess we made work." She laughed softly. "It's a beautiful mess." Lily was busy weaving clovers into crowns. She made one for June, one for May, and finally one for Harper. "This one's for you," she said, placing it gently on her head. "You look like a garden queen." Harper kissed the top of her curls. Then, "You're my princess of second chances." Daniel watched them, his heart full in a way that didn't hurt anymore. He thought of everything that had led them here, the fear, the storms, the nights of wondering if any of it was worth it. And now, watching his daughter laugh with the people who had become their family, he knew the answer had always been yes. After lunch, they lingered as the shadows stretched long. The air was warm, the world quiet. Harper rested her head against Daniel's shoulder again. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The one when I found you in the house?" She nodded. All the time, he admitted. "I still don't know why I didn't call the police." She smiled. "Because you were stubborn, and because somewhere deep down you already knew we were supposed to stay." He chuckled softly. "I think maybe we all needed saving." "Still do," she said. "But that's the point, isn't it? You just keep showing up. Keep choosing each other." He kissed her hair. "I can live with that." When it was time to leave, they stood together at the doorway. Daniel took one last look inside. The light through the window caught the dust in the air, turning it gold. Harper slipped her hand into his. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded, smiling. "Let's go home." As they walked back toward the truck, Lily ran ahead, waving goodbye to the house. "See you later," she called. "Don't forget to help the next people." May and June laughed, shaking their heads. When Daniel turned back for one last glance, the farmhouse glowed in the setting sun, standing proud and patient, waiting, as it always had for whoever needed it next. Harper slipped her arm through his. "Sometimes the best homes," she said softly, "aren't the ones we plan for." No, Daniel agreed. "They're the ones we discover when we're brave enough to walk through the door." Behind them, the garden swayed in the wind. The air smelled of mint and earth and something endless. And as they drove away, the farmhouse faded into the distance, but not their laughter, not their love, and not the feeling that somewhere deep inside those old wooden walls, hope was still waiting for its next chance to begin. And maybe that's what this story has been about all along. Not just a house or a second chance, but the quiet courage it takes to believe again. Because sometimes life falls apart so it can be rebuilt stronger. Sometimes the family you find is the one who shows up when everything else disappears. And sometimes the door that changes everything isn't the one you plan to walk through, it's the one you never expected to open. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever experienced something like this? A moment when compassion, faith, or a simple act of kindness changed your life, or someone else's? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear where you are listening from and how far these stories travel to reach you. And if you believe in second chances in love that grows through broken places, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story that might just find you. Thank you for spending this time with us, for listening, for feeling, and for believing that goodness still exists. Until next time. This is the House of Second Chances, reminding you that hope like a home is something we keep building together.